if you want the thing overnight, it's generally not going to work. You know that. You went through. You've been in the darkness before, and everybody in this chair has been in the darkness, and you just have to get the substance, to get the experience. You have to be in the darkness a little bit.
One path is a long, winding, unpaved, back-breaking, bumpy, miserable road to a place called success. The other road is straight, paved, smooth, comfortable, and that road ends up in a place called failure. Welcome to the show. I am Kyle Matthews on the Matthews Mentality Podcast, where we dive into the mindset of the world's most driven founders, CEOs, business moguls, athletes, and entrepreneurs. Each episode will turn our guests' wisdom into practical advice that will help you build a deeper understanding of what led them to success and the mentality behind what got them there. Let's get started. Well, welcome everyone to this episode of the Matthews Mentality Podcast. Today we are joined by a longtime friend of mine, David Dunn. David is the chairman and CEO of Athletes First. He's represented athletes for over 25 years and negotiated more NFL contracts than any other agent. Is this true?
Probably.
25
years.
There you go.
Right?
Over the years, he has become one of the most prolific, effective, and respected negotiators in the industry, negotiating contracts for players such as Aaron Rodgers. I know that guy. Carson Palmer, Steve Young, Ray Lewis, Reggie Wayne, John Lynch, Matt Cassel, and my buddy Cass Dog, Ed Reed, Sanchez, and I don't know why they include this guy, Clay Matthews.
Good Lord.
Dave's worked with 12 Hall of Famers, 7 Heisman Trophy winners, 6 Super Bowl MVPs, 7 Walter Payton Men of the Year. Just a lot of very successful athletes David has represented and done a great job over the years. David, thanks for joining me on the show.
Not at all.
How you been?
Good. You know what that all means?
What?
It means I'm old.
Yeah. You don't. No, you look great.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So do you.
We were talking. I know. I feel like it's been almost 10 years since I've seen you.
Well, that's because your knucklehead brother.
I know.
Retired.
I'm sorry you had to deal with that guy.
Yeah.
Hopefully in retirement he bugs you less.
Yeah, we can talk about that for hours.
Certainly, we're gonna grab a beer and one of my favorite pastimes is sitting with you and saying bad things about him. So no,
and then telling him about it.
And then telling him about it, and then he'll get upset. But it's great to see you. I was thinking about in preparation for this episode. I was like, man, when did I meet David? And I think we met. One of my brothers was getting ready for the draft. You were showing up to pitch on your representation, and we met at the company I was at in our office in Encino in the small conference room.
Very small.
And different industries, but again, service-based representation. And in the Matthews family, there's so many athletes. I was, at the time, the only one with some semblance of business experience and hiring or being hired. And so they kind of turned to me like, Kyle, hey, what questions should we ask? And I just pulled out my brokerage manual and I started asking questions like, I remember I asked you, hey, David, what is the value of your representation? And it was very real estate, but you did.
That's where that came from.
You did an amazing job, and you're in the business, and you did a phenomenal job for so many of my family members, and I thank you for that.
Yeah, not at all. I remember it clearly. That year, Brian Cushing, Ray Maluga, were these top linebackers,
and everybody was going after them.
And then there was this walk-on that wasn't supposed to do anything.
With long hair, yeah, I know.
Flew up the charts.
I know. I will say, I remember being in the meeting, and we didn't know what was going on. We were learning on the fly, and
right.
I think we asked you, like, hey, what do you think? Like, just again, we're not going to hold you. Where do you think, he gets drafted? And we had asked the question with a couple other athletes, and this was the only moment, me personally, I'd ever involved myself with the family business of football. Other than that, I really keep it arm's length, and I like just to be a family member and a fan.
Very smart. I wish others were like that.
That's a long. we could talk about that later, but I did ask. I said, hey, what do you think? And I'd asked other agents, and I think you guys were the last meeting, and I want to say you probably had it that way for a reason,
right?
And they were like, well, 4th, 5th round, 3rd, 4th round, maybe 2nd. Like it was, each one was a little bit more positive, and you're like, I think he's going to go 1st round. And I remember sitting there thinking like, that ain't going to happen. That's not happening. But you were right.
No, yeah.
You were right. And
he went crazy. He went crazy his senior year and then blew it away at the combine.
He did a great job at the combine.
Then he went, with all the interviews, there were 3 or 4 teams.
The interviews probably set him back a little bit.
Yes. Well, that happens with any
No,
Matthews.
he's a great interview. He's a great interview, especially when he locks in. I mean, he's intelligent, he's responsible, he's professional, and the biggest thing is he shows up and works. So
yeah, he is a grinder.
He's a grinder.
I mean, he's had to be, right?
The story, but let me ask. So, what are you up to today? I know we talked earlier. You had a big event at the company recently. I mean, I know you're very active still in the business, but like,
sure.
what does day to day look like for David Dunn today?
Well, as you articulated with all the introduction there, I've been doing this for a while, and so that puts me in more of a management role. Much like you, Kyle, I'm overseeing more than I'm doing, and there's some plus and minus to that, as we discussed earlier. But a day to day is. Right now, I'm working on finishing Aaron Rodgers' deal with the Jets. I'm working on Justin Herbert's deal with the Chargers. Have a couple of guys that Steve Young and Matt Hasselbeck who were let go by ESPN, so I'm figuring their thing out. Have a bunch of coaches who are starting their seasons, and that's become a big focus of mine.
Coaching,
yes,
representing coaching.
As I've grown older, it's just become more of a joy. They're more sophisticated guys.
I was gonna say a little more reliable.
I'm not talking about rims on an Escalade. I'm talking about their kids and their grandkids and that type of thing.
Well, some rims are pretty cool, but I get it. That's still coaches and then ex-players in their let's call it broadcasting, and then quarterbacks because that's fun. Yeah, they tend to be chunkier deals.
No, quarterbacks are, especially with the rule changes now. I was talking with Steve Young earlier today about it. With all the rule changes, protecting quarterbacks are just going to become more and more important to the game.
Well, yeah, back in, when we were growing up, quarterbacks would be 8, 10, 12 years now, 15, 20. I mean, how old's Aaron, 40?
He's going to turn 40 December 2nd.
Yeah. Oh, he's going to take it personally. I said he was 40.
Yeah. He will.
He will, and he'll never forget. He 100%, barring something tragic happening on the field, like
he could play for 3,
5, 7 years. I mean, Tom Brady was still playing at a high level, and he was 45.
It's interesting. I was talking with Steve about that as well, and he retired because of a concussion or a series of concussions.
He also played the game hardcore. I mean, he was an athlete. Well, and he would run, and that didn't help.
He's one of the few quarterbacks that back then play like the quarterbacks play now.
Yeah, good point.
Now you have Jalen Hurts against Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. I think you're going to see a lot more of those move quarterback Super Bowls.
But nowadays, you still can't hit them, even respectfully, even when they're running. Back then, that was like, oh, he's running. Thank God we get to tee off on this guy.
The league will do anything to keep those guys in the field.
Because it's people show up to watch the quarterbacks.
Sure. No, that's the name of the game.
So quarterbacks, coaches, broadcasting, and then managing the business. What does the business look like? How big is Athletes First?
We've expanded monstrously. We combined with Todd France and Trace Armstrong. Todd was one of our competitors.
Sure.
Always a great competition. One of those where I'm sure you have
forced you to be better.
Yeah. One of those that it's like Tyron Smith and Clay Matthews. Tyron made Clay better,
sure,
because he had to work so hard to beat him, and that was true of Todd until we can't beat him, join him, and we brought him on board. Same with Trace, and Trace Armstrong, who was the president of the NFLPA and then became a coach's agent. Now we have as big a coaching agency as there is in certainly in football and I think in all the sports.
Are you still? I want to say at the time you're based out of Orange County, and you have multiple offices now.
Yeah, we have Orange County is our base, and we probably have 35, 40 people there, but we have office in Austin. David Mulgeta mans that one, and Gainesville is our coach's office. That's where Trace and a handful of other guys are. And then we have spot offices where individuals are, just
like
to
satellite
give
offices.
Spaces. Yeah.
And are you? I know you have an incredible market share on the football side. Is that your focus, or
that's always going to, that's the.
Just have so much momentum.
I think, as we'll probably get into, you get good at what you're good at, and it becomes your base, and it's hard to leave that base. We venture out and do other things now and again, but football's our focus. We have 225 or so player clients, probably close to that in coaching clients.
In just the NFL?
Yeah.
Wow. How many players are in the NFL at one time?
1,400.
So that's a significant chunk.
Yeah, but
that's a large market share.
Yes.
And I know historically, I mean, you guys appeared, in my opinion, you did all things well, but quarterbacks was what you were really known for.
Yeah. No,
and that's still a thing.
They make the most money.
Do they?
Yeah.
God, I knew I should have been a quarterback.
It's sort of the best thing to do.
I knew I should. The worst position? Safety.
Yeah, long snappers probably. Yeah, exactly.
No, because a long snapper, you don't get injured. You just keep going, no pressure.
I've had 2 guys play into their 40s.
I was going to say, long snappers are great, and they're probably your easiest clients.
Oh, they're sweethearts. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. I want to, if you don't mind, let me take a step back.
Sure.
Walk us through your childhood. You grew up in Southern California. Tell us about what you're like as a kid, and then I want to kind of transition that into getting into the business.
Grew up in Redlands, California, which is on the way everywhere, on the way to Palm Springs, to the Colorado River.
Back then there probably wasn't a ton out there, right?
Not at all.
It was desert.
Now it's
it's a city.
Now it's a suburb of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Grew up there, sort of an idyllic upbringing. We're all functions of our family. I know that you are, with your competitiveness and your ambition and your diligence. So am I. And my father was a first-generation college graduate, went to law school, worked for the DA's office, and then was a very, very successful lawyer in San Bernardino, president of the County Bar Association, and my mom graduated from Cal as well. And I just grew up in a house of achievement, that where it wasn't pushed on you, it wasn't hammered into you, it was just sort of expected.
It was kind of the culture of the family.
Yeah, and I think it's
brothers and sisters.
You can relate. One sister who's a lawyer in San Diego, doing exceptionally well, her own law firm. Went to UCLA, manager of the football team, gave me a connection with a lot of the guys.
How does that happen? Was that something you sought out, or you stumbled into it?
My brother-in-law, who kicked at UCLA, was entering his senior year, connected me with Terry Donahue, the head coach, and then we got into it. And
so your brother-in-law, dating at the time, his sister,
and ultimately married.
And he said, "Hey, you should look into this."
Yeah.
And you connected with Terry Donahue, legendary coach.
Yeah. And was I was there 7-8 weeks before school started, so I got a jump on school.
I'm telling you, the what do they call it? The athletic trainers?
Yeah, managers.
Athletic managers. In my experience at USC, I'm sure as a UCLA, they were the hardest working people in the program.
I got a scholarship. There were a lot of perks to the job, especially back then. I think most of all, as I look back on it, it gave me a sense of how it all worked. It gave me a sense of the locker room, and how
you learned how to speak athlete.
Yeah.
It's a different culture.
No, it's funny when Cameron Crowe was following us around when he was filming Jerry Maguire, or in preparation for filming Jerry Maguire. I was going to
bring that up.
He had to learn that. He with his films, as he engrosses himself in things, and he had Tom Cruise and Cuba Gooding follow us around, sort of to get that thing.
I was going to ad-lib. I think I was reading your bio off your website. I was going to put the real-life Jerry Maguire. Did you take the goldfish?
I do. I don't like fish that much.
Okay, so that.
Yeah. I have a lot of dogs.
But
you can have one if you want.
No, I got enough dogs, and I got kids. I got too much of everything and responsibility. So I'm trying to unload responsibility.
We have about
But so you're athletic trainer at UCLA, and that was really your introduction into that industry of sports and athletes, and it is a very, my experience and in my opinion, it's just a very unique culture, unlike anything you're going to find in a I'm going to call it professional setting.
No doubt.
And was that, and you were going to school to become a lawyer?
I
You're getting your law degree?
I was in studying communications at UCLA. Graduated, worked for the Olympics way back when.
84?
It tells you how old I am. And that was just fascinating because you had what Peter Ueberroth managed to do is he was able to gather CEOs from Quaker Oats, and who they make all the cereals that we eat, and General Mills and Ford and a lot of great athletes at the time, Gail Goodrich and others, became involved in putting together the games. And I came on early enough to really get to know the people that I just mentioned, and learning from the top people in the sports industry at such a young age was just invaluable.
You mentioned you had a scholarship to UCLA, academic?
Yeah. No, through the managing.
I got you.
It was fantastic.
And so would you say you were always, I'm asking you to describe yourself, which can be hard, but if you look back at junior high, high school, if I were to sit and talk to someone who knew you at your time, your best friend, would they describe you as always a very driven, very ambitious person? I
think anybody who's going to sit in this chair, will be that, unless you get an heir to the throne, so to speak. But I was always the one who outstudied and outworked everybody.
Why do you think that was?
I think it's just something in me. Part of it was, I think that I saw how hard my dad worked and how happy he was, and what a great family he raised. And I always sort of had that in mind, to grind at the beginning.
Like an aspiration.
Grind at the beginning, and later on you can sort of enjoy the fruits of your labor.
So delayed gratification?
Yes. I mean, I think, again, anybody who is going to be sitting in this chair, has had to do that. Has had to reinvest himself through time and money and opportunities and chances and risks, for that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
You're right. We're definitely seeing those trends of discipline.
Yeah.
And it's discipline at a young age, which is often hard for younger people.
It is. And I was always one of the more disciplined. I always realized that, I'm sure you can relate to that as well.
Was that something you're talking about your dad kind of instilled and sat you down and said, these are the expectations of being in this family? Or is it just something you learned kind of by watching him?
I think it's just osmosis. I got it through just watching him, watching my sister, who's 4.5 years older than I am, watching her study hard, succeed, go to UCLA.
And in your family, it was just like, this is how it is.
Right. And so it was nothing that was said, it was just understood.
So would you say, put that under, these are my words, but would you put that under nurture?
Yeah.
Do you believe there's also nature? Like in the...
Yeah, for sure. I had, I think, maybe an extra gear of ambition. And I think I always wanted to be involved in sports in some way. I just enjoy it. I guess, when I go home, I'll turn on Sports Center, not any other channel.
Yeah.
And like a lot of people in this country, that's just sort of my thing. Yeah. And to combine it with work, it's just fantastic. I mean, it's just,
I agree.
I'm the luckiest person on the planet.
Yeah. I mean, that's very cool. I mean, most people don't get to work within sports, but sports for most people, at least in my opinion, see if you agree, is it's nice to sit on a couch and kind of get to turn your brain off and allow yourself to be entertained, but entertained by human beings that are doing incredible things, depending on what sport you're watching.
Well, it's the reason that I have a job is that this country is filled with people who irrationally follow a game where a guy throws around a ball made out of animal's fur a little bit
You
straighter,
put it that way,
a little bit straighter than the next guy.
Yeah,
Like
and
somebody from another planet would
how
come
about
down
this?
and say,
Your specific, your specialty football is a game where men put their skulls into each other. And,
yeah,
yeah,
better than the next guy, and
better
so
than the next guy.
the long snapper, a guy can basically throw something between his legs
At a spiral,
a little bit faster.
Yeah.
Now we'll hire him and pay him $1 million.
Yeah.
So
Gosh.
this country is
That's what
wacky.
I should have done. I should have been a long snapper. I'd still be playing.
I'm telling you.
My uncle,
I wanted my son.
My uncle was like one of the last guys. He was a Hall of Fame offensive lineman. I mean, you know,
Right, sure.
your reppers is
right.
But he was one of the last guys who could still snap.
Right.
And I should have just like.
Is that right?
Yeah.
He could long
He was
snap.
a great. He could long snap, and he was the short snapper for the field goal for I think till the end of his career. Wow. And I'll tell you, like again, I just want to tangent too much. It was his last year. I think I was a junior in college, and we had just finished our bowl game, and I snuck out to his last game. I think it was almost of his career again. He was 40, 41 when he retired.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
And their long snapper, weirdly enough, got hurt, and so they're like, Bruce, you're gonna have to long snap. He's like. And this is on a punt. He's like, and so they just, their coach Jeff Fisher went to the other coach at the midfield before the game. He's like, hey, we got an injury. Bruce is gonna be snapping. Just
don't
tell your guys.
Please.
No, tell your guys don't. And it's kind of gentleman's agreement in the NFL, like no problem. So they went to special teams. They kind of pulled it like, hey, Matthew's gonna be snapping. Don't block him. He's not gonna make the tackle. So they just let him go. But
you just stood up.
Yeah, but man, I should have been a long snapper. But.
Your family, by the way, he played 20 years. I remember talking to your dad. Didn't he play 19?
They both played 19. I believe my dad played 278 games, which is the most in history. I could be wrong. And the only one who's either close or beat him was your client, Ray Lewis.
Right. That's right.
I think it's right there at the linebacker position.
Right.
And most in NFL history for a defensive player, period. And then the other one on offense is non-kicker and non-quarterback.
Right.
I know you love quarterbacks, but is Bruce.
I love offensive linemen too. They're wonderful.
They're like giant children.
Oh,
they're big kids. Yeah,
you said it.
Big.
They're easy.
They're easy. I think he played 280 something games, but just
how about that?
Those guys are born different, man.
That's.
Yeah,
550 some games.
I think I've had more injuries making cold calls than they did playing football. So they're made of a different steel, but but they're great people. So you're working on the Olympics. That's a special place and time.
Right.
You learn a ton. You're surrounded by unique leadership.
Yep.
And then do you go back to school?
Went to law school in the Bay Area, and at that time, Lee Steinberg had his offices up there. And
Lee Steinberg is a sports agent.
Lee Steinberg was one of the pioneers of the sports agent industry. His first client was Steve Barkowski, shoot back in the late 70s, and represented guys like Warren Moon.
And before Lee, was it players just didn't really have representation?
I think the money didn't call for that, and the teams had such a tight grip.
There was no free agency.
There was
nothing.
Yeah.
They definitely owned your rights, to put it lightly.
Yes.
I'll tell you a real quick funny story about my grandfather. You may know this. So he played for the 49ers.
Yep.
And then I think he paused to go to the Korean War and then came back. So he played like 2 years, then stopped, then came back.
Wow.
Different generation, right? Different generation than today's players.
Much different.
Came back, and he was at the 49ers, defense end, tight end. I think they played both ways. Leather helmet, like the whole thing. And he just stopped playing. And he was married with 5 kids, my dad being the oldest boy. And, I remember asking him, like, why'd you stop playing football? He's like, I couldn't support my family on this. He's like, I couldn't do it.
Yeah. He made probably a couple $100.
$200 a game.
Yeah.
And they didn't work 6 months out of the year. And I remember he told me he went to Georgia Tech, and he said he got an alumni letter about, like, what alumni were doing. And it said, like, class of whatever, 52 or whatever year, he graduated, and he said he looked at guys that he knew, he thought he, was either smarter or outworking, and he's like, they were ahead of me, and I felt like I was being left behind.
Right.
And
so CEOs, et cetera, right?
Yeah, and so he actually ended up becoming the CEO of Bell & Howell.
Wow. Oh, yeah. Wow.
He worked his way up to.
So he
did okay.
Your family's sort of.
Yeah, they're
diligent.
We're not here to talk about my family. I'll have them on one of these days. You'll love that, but I'll get my old man on.
Let me interview him.
Oh, no, dude. No. Let
It'd
both
be
of
more
us
of a,
interview.
it'd
We'll
be
just-
more
we'll just-
more
it's
of
a
a roast.
I was gonna
yeah.
say it's gonna be a roast because again, you had to deal with these guys. So
I did. I
so-
got to.
Yeah, you got to. It was a privilege. So you're up in the Bay. You go to law school and you connect with Lee Steinberg.
Yeah, and then so while I was there, I ghost wrote a few things for him, which means
Yeah. What does it mean?
I would write something in a negotiation horn book for law students, negotiating baseball contracts, let's say, and it'd be a 30-page article, and it would be by Lee Steinberg, little asterisk, thanks to Dave Dunn.
And how did you connect with Lee? Was it through relation or
Just through the UCLA connections? My brother-in-law was represented by him, and
That's right.
So
That's right. Okay.
it just I was in the, as you know,
The trust
sports is such a small little
Yeah.
environment.
And with and maybe even way more now, but very high walls because there's so
Yes.
many people coming at them. There's
Sure.
so many people asking and trying to get things, and something as simple as a picture autograph, but oftentimes financially they want to get involved, and so I've found that community to have very high barriers of entry.
That's 100% right. So many people, because it's so enjoyable, want to be connected in some way, and because the money's so significant, especially now. So by being around Lee, I would work at his Super Bowl parties or other gatherings that he'd have, and I got close to some of his clients up there. I got close to Steve Young. I got close to Will Clark, who was a baseball player back in the day, Will the Thrill, and so I was sort of in the club, so to speak. And after graduating from law school, I worked as a normal lawyer for a couple of years.
Said, I don't know about this.
Yeah. And, after defending Ford when one of their cars exploded, sorry, Ford, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to do what I really want to do. Lee had been asking me to work with him for a few years, and came up to Orange County, started working for him, and the ride started.
So what year is this, roughly?
This is 1990.
So 1990, you get into the business. What does it look like those first couple of years? Like, what is your day-to-day? And, really I want to talk like lifestyle in terms of...
It was day and night, just working.
Just nonstop work all the time.
Like I was either working on something with clients, traveling somewhere to be with clients, or to negotiate something. It was the most intense learning period of my life, but bar none. Law school, not even close. And I will tell you, the substance that I learned during that time is done very well for me for the last 30 years.
The foundation of everything that came after.
Yeah.
What, like practically speaking, what Monday through
I mean,
Sunday, every day, morning, noon, and night?
I mean, Monday, during the season, you'd look backwards, deal with any injuries or what have you from the game, hurt feelings, congratulations. And at that point, it was only Lee, Jeff, Morad, who ultimately was the GM of the Arizona Diamondbacks and owned the Padres for a little bit. It was the three of us, Lee, Jeff, and me, and one assistant. That's all. And so I was a jack of all trades. I was doing marketing deals. I was doing everything that needed to be done. So it was, I will tell you, a lot of what I still do is just problem solving. So it's if there was an allegation of enhanced substance, I'd handle that with the league. Uniform violations, second opinions for injuries, workers' comp, all the things, all the things that guys have to deal with.
So you basically it was almost like you're your own company.
Right.
Nowadays, let me jump. Like if I'm an agent, sports agent, Athletes First, you might have teams that help, if not take a lot of that off the plate. But
yes.
Back then, it was just you.
Just me. Yeah. So I would sleep in my car. I'd sleep at the office a bunch. And we'd have 9, 10 draft picks I'd be negotiating the deals. Lee would be traveling around, visiting the teams and handling the press part of it. And again, it was especially during the month of July, which is when the draft picks were harder to do back then. It was just a grind.
And that was because they weren't slotted, or
it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't slotted at all.
What about?
It wasn't slotted at all. It was more.
It's like the Wild West.
Yeah, it was. That's exactly the way it put it.
Which means, as an agent, you probably you might swing and miss a little more, and then all of a sudden, someone a pick behind got a better deal, and it you'd have some egg on your feet.
Yeah, or hopefully the other way around.
I'm sure people want to know, so I'll ask the question, like recruiting athletes out of college at the time. Again, you don't share any stories you don't want to, but like, what was that like? What was like then? And then we could real quick jump, like, what is it like today? How has that changed? Like, I'm sure, everyone hears the stories, and I'm sure there's been movies that embellish, but what is that process usually like back then?
Well, the first time you do it is awfully nerve-wracking, to say the least, just because you're walking into a living room and this family is looking to you to basically replace them in an athlete's life. You're going to now take care of them. We did, along with the college environment, and now it's all you. You're the expert. And so both back then and now, you have to give them a sense of expertise. I can do it a lot easier now.
Yeah.
I think it's, back then it was sort of petrifying in many ways. Lee would take the lead on most of them.
Kind of like a mentor-mentee.
Yeah, exactly right. And I'd prepare him. A lot of recruiting is getting to know the athlete as much as you can before you
would you meet them on campus? Was it like a cold call? Would you kind of trying to hang around practice as they're walking off? You're like, hey,
I think best case you'd meet them before their last year, whether it was junior or senior year. Get a sense of it and either have an understanding that you're going to be the guy after the season ended, or you're going to be one of two or three that are going to be interviewed. I think that's sort of what happened with Clay. I think that we talked to you either before or during the season. And then
during the season. Yeah, we ran into Ryan, Ryan Williams works with David at Athletes First. We ran into Ryan after a game. He knew the president of our company at Matthews, Dave Harrington. They knew each other from UCLA.
Got it.
And so they recognized each other. And Dave's like, oh, I'm here with the Matthews family. And Ryan was like, oh, do you mind introducing? And that was the introduction, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that's right. Yeah. So I know that Ryan was awfully nervous.
Shout out to Dave Harrington. Made it all happen, baby. Thunder Dave. He's probably going to ask for some of that fee.
Yeah, gosh.
Referral. So you try and meet the athlete and just get a conversation going. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, like really allow for the opportunity to pitch your services, right?
Yeah. And by the time that I talked to Clay 20 years down the road, I had represented Ray Lewis, his position, the best, one of the best who ever played. And I think it's akin to a doctor. If you need shoulder surgery, you're going to want the best shoulder surgeon, and
someone who's done 1,000 of them,
and who can do them in their sleep. And that
you bring up a great point. So you're talking about 20 years later when you and I met. You had established credibility. So we probably didn't spend much of the meeting say, talk to us about you and what have you done. Just read the bio. But how did you establish credibility early on as a young agent who really didn't have that experience?
I think a lot of it was derivative. I think a lot of it was derivative from Lee. So I'm grateful for that from him.
And you're leveraging his track record, and in many ways he's probably overcoming objections at the meeting, and in exchange you're going to split the fee in some capacity.
Yeah, I mean, it'll go to the
this is real estate. We have mentor-mentees, and this is how our business works, and it's interesting the parallels there.
Yeah, I think what they ultimately did was they'd pay me a salary that reflected my value, and as with anything else, as I grew in the firm, I gained more leverage with them.
Yeah, I was going to say,
and then they had to pay up.
We'll get it. So what was your first big win?
I think Bledsoe.
Drew Bledsoe. Coming out of Washington State.
Yeah, Drew Bledsoe. I recall uh, getting off of a plane in Pullman where the baggage claim area was as big as this little room, and got my bag. It was dead of winter, and Mac Bledsoe had told me, hey, look outside. I'll be there. I went outside, and I think it was snow, and I sort of looked through the snow, and just saw like a big semi truck and a guy on a motorcycle, and I went back in. This is before cell phones. This is how old it is, and I called him, and no answer. And I looked back out again, and walked over to the guy on the motorcycle, and
It was him.
it was him. And I'm sure it was a test of some sort. Get in the back, and so off we go. Froze my butt off, and I went to the house, and we just connected. It was such a soft, perfect recruit to start with.
Mismanage your expectations.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, and I will tell you,
I heard he was a great guy.
Oh my gosh, and the family is just fantastic. Both two school teachers. I remember Drew, his first shoe deal was for a few $100,000, and I think it was for $1.2 million total, which was more than his parents had made in all their years of teaching combined, and that he was getting paid for wearing a shoe that he'd wear anyway. So
again, life-changing.
Again, the craziness of sports in America. But yeah, he and that was just the key about recruiting is just drawing a connection, and a lot of that is by studying up. It's a lot easier to do these days, with the net and everything that you can get off of it.
There's no social media to learn about the athletes ahead of time or their families.
No, so you just figure out the commonalities, and as with anything else, as and jumping forward to today, it's just a lot easier today because the odds are really anybody I'm talking to in the country, I know or represent their coach. I know or represent one of the coaches on their staff, one of the players who's recently come from their school. So with Justin Herbert, I'd known all of his coaches, as he came into college, Mark Helfrich's of the world, and knew a bunch of people around him. Casey Martin, the golf coach up there, who was a friend of his, and Justin Wilcox, who's the coach of Cal, who Justin Herbert was named after because the families were so close. And so just the longer you're inside the walls.
Yeah, momentum is created.
And so we become the odds-on favorite.
Home field advantage. You're getting momentum in your career, but it sounds like, if I'm not mistaken, like you were grinding all the time.
Yeah, like I was going to a game every weekend, and at that point there weren't any teams in LA, so I was either driving down to San Diego or flying up to.
So you fly out on a Saturday, fly back Sunday night, Monday.
I would stay, just overnight, have dinner with whoever my client was. With the Niners, would generally have dinner with Steve Young after he'd win, and with his contingent of 37 or 38 people, and
those are big dinner tabs.
Oh, he had
he picked them up.
Strangest, most eclectic group, which is another discussion.
Another conversation.
Yeah.
Let me ask. So, you hear it talk, and it's funny. Like, this has come up in every one of these conversations thus far, and it's almost becoming a theme. Like, where I got asked the question. So, you're telling me there wasn't a lot of work-life balance at the time. This concept.
No, there was.
How the younger people work and balance.
There was no life.
Did you ever?
And I knew it would be that way. I knew when I dove into it. It's why I didn't go into it first, because I sort of wanted that balance, but it became too important to me to enjoy what I was doing day to day, and I was grinding. But I was grinding by traveling to the Super Bowl, the Super Show, which used to be a marketing thing in Atlanta that was a cool thing to do, the NBA All-Star Game with Warren Moon. I mean, that was me, maintaining a client. So, you know, it's the content of, I was grinding, but the content of the work
it was exhausting, but there were certainly fun aspects to it.
No doubt. No doubt.
They didn't have to twist your arm to go to the Super Bowl.
And as I talked to my law school buddies, you know, who were grinding in their third or fourth year of whatever they were doing, my life was a lot better, with a higher upside ultimately.
I know you have 4 kids, but were you building a family at the same time?
So started in 90, married in 95.
Okay.
First kid in 97.
So
97, 99.
You had a 5, 6, 7 years.
Yes.
And again,
she knew what she was getting into.
Yeah. Okay. That I was gonna say.
And you have to have a patient person.
Yeah.
You know, for sure.
Yeah, because that could be tough. Now.
Yeah.
You have your first kid at that time. Was there an adjustment, or was like, hey, I'm still gotta do this?
Well, it's funny. With respect to my first kid, so my wife was pregnant, and first daughter was due March 12th, and I was in New Orleans for Drew Bledsoe playing in his first Super Bowl, only Super Bowl that he played in.
That was against the Packers.
In
96.
96, right. 96 season, 97 Super Bowl. And so I'm down there. They're playing the Packers. I only had one guy on the Packers that I did. He was just a kick returner that I didn't think would do anything, but it was Desmond Howard.
I'm about to say, I think he took one back, right?
Who ended up winning the MVP of the game. So here we had done all this Disney prep work with Drew, and you know, I'd spent the week with Drew, and I had seen Des once, and you know, I'm with him at the end of the game, and we're about to go to Disneyland, and I called to tell my wife that. By then I had a cell phone. I'm standing in the middle of confetti on the podium that they had used, and you know, I called back and I said, hey, you know, I have to go to Disney World, and then we're going to go up to Letterman and and back for the parade in Green Bay. And she said, honey, my water broke. And so my daughter, who came, I don't know, 5-6 weeks early, it was one of those, like, you know, things, you know, got the flight, like, crack of dawn the next morning, flew back. I was looking down out of the plane. God, that's Texas. Go by quickly. Made it back probably with 3-4 hours to spare.
Wow.
Yeah. That describes sort of the
lifestyle.
And then I was at the Pro Bowl, you know,
I was going to
a couple
say,
weeks,
and then
a couple weeks later.
You're like, you good, right?
Yeah.
And then I got to go back out.
Right.
That's
so,
cool.
Yeah.
And so, because those are, you know, building a business, especially the way you're grinding and, you know, building a career it seems like it takes everything. And then you start with family and especially children. And again, not to dive into, but it's a commitment and it's time. And sometimes those can feel mutually exclusive.
No, there's no doubt. And, you know, that's why, you know, I was Lee's partner for 10 years for a variety of reasons. I decided to leave, and that was a thing. I mean, it was one of those times where I knew I was going to have to dive back into the grind, you know, because I had eased off a little bit, you know.
Because you had a partner and you're...
I had been doing it for 10 years. I knew the content of it. I knew some players who'd go with me, but I knew for my business to survive on my own, you know, to compete in the world,
you're going to have to go back into the darkness.
I was going to have to blast away again 24/7.
I would guess that you had that conversation with your wife, like, hey, this is the opportunity.
Yes.
But
probably not as long as I should have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, but some of that may have been you just may not have, like, I'll speak from my own experience. Like, you start a business and you're like, no, it's going to be hard. I'm going to grind. But, like, you never really know until you get it. You don't know. And then
when, you know, the third night in a row, 3:30 in the morning,
and then you become, you know, the gray hair guys like us. And, you know, someone's like, hey, I'm thinking about starting my business. You never want to talk someone out of it. And you don't want to poo-poo the idea, but you're like,
sure?
I don't think you understand. But again,
and there are some people where you look at them and say, no. Oh, they're not going to do it.
You're nicer than I am. I'm always like, yeah, sure. Like, I don't want to be the one, but you're like, this ain't gonna work out.
Yeah.
But all right, so 10 years, Lee Steinberg, 2000-ish, around that time.
2001.
What? Where does this idea of athletes first come from?
So Lee was going through a tough time in his life, personally, and he was struggling in his relationships with some of our top clients, and who came to me and said that they're going to leave and go somewhere, and if I left, they'd go with me, and Brian Murphy and I, sat and talked for a little bit. Yeah, the Murph.
Yeah.
And he's the planner, so he got all these things ready, and we left sort of clumsily in February of 2001, in the dark of night. Do
you think that was because of a fear, the driver fear, like if I don't move quick and maybe don't take as much time to plan this and do it the right way, but if I don't move quick, I'm going to lose a lot of my business?
I think that, it's one of those where times, it's like the Jerry Maguire, scene where they're calling. They're both trying to call, and poor Jerry gets stuck on the phone with "Show me the money" guy.
Rod Tidwell.
Yeah, Rod Tidwell. Good memory. That was my office, by the way, that he was calling from.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's a nice view and everything.
Can I tell you a quick funny story of Jerry Maguire? So my dad is in that movie.
Is he in the?
He got filmed. I don't even know. But he got filmed for it. He got filmed like walking in the office, like, "Hey, Jerry, it's good to see you." It was like a second and a half.
Is that
like
right?
Clay Matthews. And he goes to the movie, but back then, like, you go to the movies, and I was, what was I, 14? He goes to the movies with my wife. He's like, "Babe, like, I'm in this movie. It's gonna be great. It's a big movie about, about football, sports agent." And he was cut. He's on the cutting room floor. His scene didn't make the movie, and he got pissed. He got pissed.
Yeah,
my dad.
I've been with your dad when he's pissed.
Very, very rarely, but
he's not a good pissed.
No, dude. Trust me, I was a little son. You don't want to see that.
Yeah.
I tried not.
That's
to
a funny pissed, though.
Yeah. Well, now it is.
I can imagine your mom jabbed him a little bit.
I'm sure. My mom. She's teasing him, but again, my mom told me the story. So sorry, Dad. I'm not making funny. I am making funny.
Yes.
But he had a scene. So I'll have to get I think you could get like the
unedited version. But anyway, the B-roll.
That was the Jerry Maguire. So they came to you and Lee and the group you were at the time, like, "Hey, we want to make this movie and just teach us the business." Yeah,
in essence. And so they followed us around for a little bit, followed us around for a Super Bowl. So Cuba's character was largely based on Kajana Carter, who was our top rookie that year.
Penn State?
And he was a running back from Penn State. And
where do you go, the Jets?
Went number 1 in the draft to the Bengals.
That's right.
Got hurt.
He broke his leg like in the preseason.
First preseason,
I remember.
And never was the same.
Yeah.
Great kid. But that, if you know Kajana and you watch the movie, they're the same type of guy. But I mean, they would follow athletes around. Cuba would to get figure out how they put on deodorant, which is like different. They're more emphatic about it. And did a great job. Obviously, he won the Oscar for it. But that was a fun time. We had a lot of our guys in it, including Drew and Kajana.
Speaking of the Jerry Maguire, the famous "Show me the money" and taking to the goldfish, like,
right.
So this gets back to you starting Athletes First. I think you said it was a little messy exit. How did that?
It was, they obviously Lee and a company that had purchased Lee Asante, which was an insurance financial management concern from Canada, had bought the company, and I didn't like the fact that we were going to be encouraged to have our guys go to that company for financial management. I just didn't, they hadn't done it before, and so to me it was sort of a conflict of interest, and for that and the other reasons that I described, I decided to leave. I would say that 40 of the guys went with us or so, and they didn't like that. So
I can only imagine.
They weren't pleased.
And so how does that?
So that ended up with a trial where we lost in trial at the federal court level. We won on appeal. We ended up settling, and what I just described in those few sentences took a lot of pain and toil.
I was going to say that. First of all, that takes time
and a few dollars. That's the thing. It takes time,
3 to 4 years,
and it's uncertainty, and you're always
the mind share.
You're always working with a pit in your stomach.
I call it elevated resting heart rate.
Yeah, you're right.
You're never
for years,
relaxed,
right?
For years,
yeah. So got through that, and then was able to tell sort of another story. Had all the other. So,
but sorry, like when you started your business and you walked out, you had the clients, but was it just you and Murph? Like,
it was me and Murph.
Did you raise money, self-funded?
We raised $5 million, $4 million from Tom Goris, who's one of the wealthier people in the country, who now owns the Detroit Pistons, and therefore had to divest later on his interest in our company, which was good for us.
I was going to say,
it worked well for us. And then $1 million from one of Murph's uncles, actually.
Rich uncle.
Yeah, rich uncle. Yeah. Richer now. And so we sold off little chunks for that, tiny chunks for that, and that got us through a little bit, and it worked as well as it could work. I think we needed that to get going, to get an office space, to get to pay our bills and our plane fares, and then we started rolling, and your brother's class was one of our first big ones back. Yeah,
that was 2009.
Yeah.
So all right, 2000.
Yeah, we had I think 4 picks in the top 20.
That's a big class. Yeah. What about so 2000 you start the business and you touched on it. You kind of had to. Not that you weren't working hard, but
I dove back into the darkness.
You went back in the dark. And so what does that look like? Is that 7 days a week? Is that traveling nonstop? Is it?
It's. I will tell you, it was as much emotion and nerves as it was time.
Fear of failure.
It was a lot of time. It was just we were much like Jerry Maguire was in that scene. We were like competing for our lives, for these guys, and we thought we had the better story to tell, and we ultimately signed most of them, but it was a grind. It was tough there for a while.
Yeah, especially kind of going to war with.
Sure, and we're criticizing each other. Trying to stay above the fray as much as I could, and.
I hear the agency can be a tough business in that sense sometimes.
Oh,
right?
God, it's
put it lightly.
Yes.
Yeah. My experience again, it was very limited, but I actually was fortunate. We didn't get any of that, which was great.
Oh, so, God, I've walked into meetings where articles that are in any way negative about me, are sort of spread on the table
by the guy who just left.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about, because again, so much of what we dive into is mindsets and mentality, and how would you describe your mentality at that point, or where your mindset was at in terms of I've started this business, and I am willing to. Well,
then you've made a decision, right? You're taking a fork in the road, because I could have stayed and compromised my principles and watched a few athletes leave to go to other places, but I chose to do the other thing, at age 40-ish. For a while, I'd say for 3 years, it was survival. I mean, just flat survival, putting one foot in front of the other, and at the same time trying to grow it a little bit. So Joey Harrington, Mike Williams, Deshaun Foster. We had a good draft in 2003 or 4, and then the next draft, one of the next drafts we had Carson Palmer.
Yeah, CP,
and who was sort of the father of all the
quarterbacks,
the future USC success. And
I love playing with Carson. He is still such a good dude.
He's such a solid guy.
He's a dude. My favorite thing of Carson is you could tell he's because he's first of all, he's giant. He's like 6'6". He's like legitimate.
Huge hands.
Huge hands, and he's built. But
right.
I'm not. Maybe we get mad at me. He dresses like he's got a T-shirt. He's got his like Swatch watch on.
Right.
Couple pair of shorts, flip flops, and like I don't think I've ever seen his hair combed ever.
No.
Maybe for the Heisman thing, and I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at the picture.
Oh, I'm sure Shea made him do it.
But he's the easiest going guy, a competitor, in insane talent. Like, if you had to make a quarterback in a factory, that
he's like, it's funny when you meet quarterbacks or any recruit for the first time, it's like going to a club looking at a girl. You know, you sort of do the up down thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and with quarterbacks, I've gone the thing where you go, oh shit, he's a little bit shorter than I thought.
Yeah.
With Carson, you're right. I mean, he was Adonis. And funny story about recruiting him that has not been told publicly, I don't think.
All right,
so,
this is good. Breaking Zach.
Yeah.
All right.
This is going to embarrass a couple of people, but
this is good. I love embarrassing people.
Yeah,
because when you embarrass people, you see how they react to it, and you can kind of size them up.
Yeah. So I'll play this for this guy and see what he says when everybody in the world knows that he did. But so I'm recruiting Carson, and it's SC. He lives probably 3 miles from me. When he won the Heisman Trophy, my wife and I went out.
Yeah, he's from. He went to Rancho Santa Maria.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he lived down in Laguna Hills, and we went by his house on the way to date night after he won the Heisman. I remember like. He cried and Shea cried during the Heisman. It was a great speech.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, God, I have to represent that guy. He was just been so perfect.
That's great.
You know,
and he battled adversity.
He came out of nowhere. Right. Right.
Yeah, he really did.
Like he was not predicted to do that. So after he wins the Heisman, he's going to interview three groups, and we're one of them. I had developed a relationship with the dad, Bill. Leading up to that, had met with him a couple of times. I think I had gone to a couple of the games and sat next to him, and so we were good. And I went up to the Wyndham. It was the Wyndham. Now it's something else right across the street from USC. It's where McKay's is.
Yeah, I think SC bought that.
Radisson's the Radisson now.
That's right.
So and we got a suite up top, and we were supposed to meet at 1 o'clock or whatever, and after his practice, and Bill calls me and says he just finished practice. We'll be right up. Well, I had brought Carmen Wallace from my office up. It was we brought an easel, and we were going to do our stupid dog and pony show, and we set up. I have the first thing ready, and he calls, and Carmen says, I'm going to go to the bathroom real quick. And the bathroom was sort of like right off of the room, the door was right there. So he closes the door, and right then I hear the knock at the door, and the Palmers come in. And, we do small talk, and Carmen never comes out. And at a certain point, like 5 minutes into
he ate some of those street hot dogs they sell right outside the Coliseum.
Chano's
yeah, Chano's right there.
Yeah.
No, for real, Chano's.
Yeah.
Chano's stays open late night, so coming out of the night, I know you can hit it up.
Yeah. No.
So he's in the bathroom?
Yeah, so he's in the bathroom, and he just doesn't come out. And after like 10 minutes or so, like I can't say anything. And so he just stays in there for 3.5 hours while I'm doing my thing.
What happened?
He just was in there. Like, he probably went through the same mind thing that I was going through, which was...
Well, now I can't come out because it's weird.
It got to be 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Like, all of a sudden he pops out.
I
didn't say anything.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
And I was hoping none of them would have to use the bathroom.
And then
can you imagine that? Hi!
Because if he was in there, I don't want to be graphic, but if he's in there for 15, 20 minutes because he's hurt.
Sure.
And then if he comes out, he's going to know that they know that he was in there doing
something not normal.
Wow, 3.5 hours.
Yeah. So and at the end of it, I'm thinking, do we have any? Well, and I have like water and Cokes and stuff for him to drink. And I was thinking, don't drink that, please.
Yeah. And then Carson's like, I got to use the restroom. Like, you know what? That one's broken. Like, let me take it down. Oh,
go down the hall.
Good for him.
Yeah.
You won the business.
Yeah. That it was.
You won the business, and that was
God. They leave. It's like, Carmen, what the hell were you doing in there?
You guys probably can laugh about that now.
Oh yeah.
But yeah. So you got
he was what an awesome client. Like
Coach was great. He is great. I heard he's living in Idaho at off the grid or something.
He's coming back down because his son's good.
Well, he better go to SC, right?
Yeah.
I know UCLA guy. You send him to Lincoln Riley, quarterback coach.
I'm gonna get him to UCLA.
No, please don't. Please don't. Don't do that to him.
Gotta even things
You say you doctors and attorneys, dude. You just stick to what you do. Do great. You say it's great doctors, great attorneys. All right. Just SC does football.
Good attorneys, I know.
Football, business, and real estate. That's SC. All right.
You make the money, and we represent you.
There you go. Yeah.
And fix you up.
And you charge us for it. You bill us.
Yes.
But all right. So adversity. I want to talk about adversity. Two different parts of it. First is like growing up in the business. What was the biggest adversity? You know, you're starting in the business under Lee, but like, what was the biggest adversity you just consistently had to overcome? And I don't want to lead you here, but it's like times where you're like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this.
Right. I would say for a couple of years, I'd say a few things about adversity. For a couple of years, I didn't have a story to tell. You know what I mean? And none of it was mine.
There's no proof of
It was
concept.
all derivative. It was all somebody else I'm talking about. You can't do that easily. You can do it to get in the door, but you can't sell that way. Plus, I didn't know what I was doing. I remember selling to a basketball player in '92 or so, Greg Anthony, who we ended up signing.
Yeah, point guard.
But yep.
Trailblazers.
Yep. Knicks, Trailblazers,
yeah, that's right.
Sonics, and Grizzlies, and great kid. He was the president of Young Republicans of Nevada. Interned at the White House. That type of kid. National champion, and so he got it. His mentor was the Secretary of Agriculture, so they both came in.
Got it. Okay.
And I'm selling in front of Lee and Jeff, and I'm just thinking, God, this sucks. And I knew it sucked. So I just I just said to myself at the time, I've got to just get a story,
That's yours.
That's mine, and
your value rep.
And I had done some things. I just wasn't able to articulate it very well. So I just, worked something out that was cohesive, and then I built on it as the years went by. So the first was recruiting. Just Lee was a name. I wasn't a name, and I was a great maintainer. I was great at negotiating. So I had those things knocked out, but as far as getting the guys,
retaining the clients, you were good at, but it was winning the business.
Winning the business, which is the key, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the other huge piece of adversity was having, however temporarily, a $44 million judgment against me. And I don't have that $44 million, nor did I then.
Oh,
I didn't have 1/44th of that.
And that was when, 2000?
That was 2003. And that's what slowed us down for a few years.
And was that from the exit?
That was from the exit, where, a jury, though misled by appealable things.
Juries, that could happen.
Yeah.
What,
but it was a bummer, and so we had to just dig out of it.
I thought you might be touching on earlier, if you had to, looking back, or if you had to go back, would you do it differently, or would?
Yeah, I would.
How so?
I would have been more upfront. I would have. I think I would have been more sympathetic to Lee's issues.
Yeah.
Now, we had been dealing with them, and we had confronted him and all, but I would have been more sympathetic to that, just sort of as a human being.
Were you afraid of if you were to say, hey, like, this is a challenge, and eventually I may consider, like, that?
No, that's like a warning that then they
might cut you off, right, or immediately declare, business war.
Yeah, I mean, and they know that I'm coming. Part of there was an element of surprise that sort of helped us. And there were some times during the departure where I could have come back, and obviously I had leverage because I had all the guys in my pocket, but they wouldn't have taken the other people back who had left, and I just had to stay with those guys, and that was that critical character building. I'm not going to do what's personally good for me. I'm going to do what's best for the whole, and Murph and the other people, Carmen included,
sure,
have been pretty loyal for
and great teammates.
Yeah, I mean, now at this point it's been more than 20 years. So
I know that's wild,
which is such a long time. Agencies don't last that long.
Well, because agencies, like I always say, like brokers, it's like dog years, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's because you're defined by who you represent, and they're such personal relationships. Like these relationships. Our relationship with Clay is like, we're close, right?
Yeah, it takes a year to get a year's experience. It takes a year to build a year's relationships, and now you have a decade. You can't compete with that if someone new is going to come off the top. 100%. So in your business, once you have it, you really have to fumble it, right? Generally speaking.
That's right.
But one of the challenges is your assets, your clients, your
But as a business, if you're running
but what I was going to say is they eventually retire. I mean, it's a physical sport, where your bodies give up.
It's finite.
Yeah, even again, we were talking about quarterbacks. I guess this does bend the rule, but generally speaking in football, your best case is 10 to 12 years, and then your entire book of business turns over.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Coaching a little different, and maybe that's probably the benefit of coaching.
Another reason I like it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can coach forever and ever, and broadcast forever and ever. Same thing. And usually you sort of escalate over time. It's challenging running a business because as I hand off relationships to other people, let's say I'm the rainmaker and I'm bringing in a bunch of guys, but I can't maintain them all,
and run the company.
So I give relationships. That's for lack of a better word, to other people.
Transition them.
They develop the relationships. They could leave with them.
Yeah, right? Similar to you and Lee and some of the relationships.
Sure.
Like I think you had mentioned, Lee was working with Steve.
Yes.
And then over time, he's like, hey, I want to introduce David. David's going to go to the Super Bowl. David's going to do this. Right. And whether it's because someone's looking to rebalance their life or they're battling personal things, and then, but that it gets you said the word leverage is all of a sudden it's like, yeah, there's leverage, and that works in the same place for you.
No, I mean, I left and Steve went with me.
Yeah.
Right. And Steve was one of his closest clients.
But, you're operating a business and being a great rainmaker are two different skill sets, and most people what I found on the real estate side is most of the top producers wouldn't necessarily make the best business operator, and most of the best business operators often never really became the top. It's a very unique person who can do both.
Right.
Talk to me about that transition of like, okay, you're the rainmaker, the producer, and respectfully, like most of your time was likely spent on servicing the client, executing the assignment. But now you have athletes first, and now you're really, especially as it scales, the operations become more and more. How did that transition? What were you balancing? And
it was all new. It's
kind of making it up on the go.
Completely. Yeah. Like just using our gut, and thanks to Murph for he was the one who was doing all the business work, all of really everything. We hired Justin Schulman. We had Mark Humanek as our GC, but Justin was our CFO.
Was there ever a moment where, outside of the judgment, which is significant, but you're like, I don't like you thought the business might fail or it might?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, you're, when the judgment comes down, you're petrified. I remember flying across the country. I was in Cleveland at the time. Strangely enough, when I got the verdict, I was looking down at a sign of IMG's home office building, or one of our main competitors. I was about to go over and knock on the door and say, "Hey, you want some clients?" Got a bunch. But yeah, it's certainly an interesting business to run from an employer standpoint. God knows. because it's just not your normal situation. The employees can derive great leverage, over you, like huge leverage.
Yeah. So you got to.
As we sold,
you as a platform have to add value at all times, right?
Well, and it's sort of what you've done as well. There has to be value added above and beyond the economics to keep people with you, and so that's the culture.
I was going to say that's the A1 culture, yeah.
That's the, and thankfully over the years.
The A1 Classic.
Yeah, the A1 Classic. That's
I love that.
Our charity event. Yeah,
that was awesome.
It's fun. Yeah,
that was such a good time.
Yeah,
that was that
Clay would go to it bitterly as he would go to anything.
I would go. I'd be like, hey, if you're not going, I'm going. Yeah. We had some good nights.
Even he had fun.
No, we
we honored you for crying out loud too.
I think you honored my. Did you?
Dad's. I think it was the Clay.
But if you want to honor me, you're more than welcome to do that.
Shoot, yeah. After this,
I don't deserve it.
Depends how this ends up.
Yeah, I don't deserve it. But what was the moment, getting back to Athletes First, where you were like,
the nadir, so to speak, or the apex.
Like when you said
nadir was probably, again, as I was flying back from Cleveland, thinking, we have this huge judgment against us. People are going to see it. I was recruiting Carson at that point, so it was right in the middle of the recruit. His dad thankfully understood, being a sophisticated businessman, that the judgment didn't mean anything for his son. I could keep doing what I'm doing and do his deal, and if he wanted me to do it. Now, that's a rare dad, but that was also a huge signing, huge.
And what was the moment when you said we're going to be okay? We made it.
I think there were a few. I think when we won the appeal, that's one of those crying with happiness moments. Calling your wife and she cries as well. I mean, it's just one of those deals. And then honestly, that class was assigned, the 2009.
And what was it? It was Clay, Mark,
it was
Sanchez.
It was Sanchez at 5, B.J. Raji at 9.
B.J., yeah, that's right.
There was somebody else before Clay at 23, 24. What was he? 20-something?
Clay was 26.
26.
I think it was 26.
And we had others. We had a bunch of others in the draft, but we had a top quarterback in New York.
I saw Mark at a charity thing in Nashville a couple months ago at Thomas Rhett's house.
Okay, good.
I was like, "Are you moving out here?"
Okay.
He was like, "Yeah, thinking about it, but I think
everybody's moving to Nashville.
I think he has a kid out here, and so he's still in Orange County.
Yeah,
it's a good town, man. You got to come visit.
Yeah, I mean, it's everybody's
just not in the
there.
Summer.
Seriously, the Hasselbacks, O'Donnell, Kerry Collins, all my guys are just.
I know.
Are there? Yeah.
But yeah, I saw Sanchez. So it was Mark. It was Clay. BJ. BJ was great. He had a couple years, and then he was like, "I'm good."
Yeah.
And that was that moment. That was you like, okay, we're gonna be all right. We did it.
And then I signed Aaron. And that was obviously,
I
didn't know how big that would be.
You signed him out of college?
I did not. I recruited him out of college, and he went with his coach's agent, which often happens, which is why I like to represent coaches.
Good point.
But we signed him. I remember this time of year because it was right around the Tahoe tournament that he just played in, finished 5th. Which is crazy.
He's a stud, man.
Yeah, I mean, 5th.
He's just a freak. He's a freak athlete.
Who does that? He's probably picked up his clubs three times.
I played basketball against him one time, but I'll tell you about that.
Okay. All right. Yeah. That sounds like a tough game.
It was a tough game. Concussions.
Yeah.
But so did he call you or you call? How did that?
That was one where, now, again, you don't know how good he's going to be. He's the guy who's going to be following Favre.
I played against him in college. My junior year, they beat us up at Cal, and he did well in the first half, but then came out the second, and I want to say they put him on the bench. But we saw, like, okay, this guy's good. Right. His senior year, he diced us up.
And you won.
We won on the last play.
But he was just like, down. I remember that.
And I just remember we didn't hear about him. And again, because Butte College, like it wasn't like one of those recruits you kind of hear about at high school, and you're like, oh, of course, this is that 5-star.
Did you know? Did you know that he was this good?
No.
Yeah.
No, and again, that game, I just assumed it was. I don't want to say a fluke. We knew he was good.
Right.
But it was like, oh, that's that. He elevated for that game.
Oh my God, he was.
And I remember when Clay got drafted to the Packers, I knew that it's like, okay, Aaron. It was the year after Aaron had taken over, and his first year as a starter, he did well.
Right.
I wouldn't say he was.
No, he was 5 and whatever.
And look, a lot of that has to do with the quarterback, some with the team. But he had done well, and I remembered him from college, having compete against him, and I was on defense. But no, Clay's rookie year, I started watching the games, and I was like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I knew who he was, but I was just like, this is a different player. And I always say, other than having family members and being blessed to be related and having the privilege of watching family members, the privilege of my life as a fan has been able to watch Aaron intimately and having a relationship with, but like really as a fan, he has brought me so much joy as a Green Bay Packers fan because he was so good. He won so many games.
Mine too. Like
so many games. He was so good.
I've brought, one thing I do on Monday nights is go on the Steve Young Express. We will leave the Bay Area at like 7 in the morning and get back to wherever. Went to Green Bay several times, and so we get back to Green Bay, watch the game, and then head back and be home by 2 o'clock in the morning or so. So it was great, there and back. His record on Monday nights, when I watched him, it's like 9-0, and all of them dramatic, and all of them just crazy, and he's just been a joy because he's so dang smart.
He's very smart.
And as you know, he's got this dry wit to him. That
he's insanely sarcastic.
I mean, really funny. And we happen to have the same thing. And
I think him and we only speak in movie quotes.
Yeah,
yeah. Good.
Yeah.
So, you better know Step Brothers.
Yeah.
No. So that was a big one, and then it's kind of blown up since.
Yeah, and then now. Shoot, we've had 9 first-rounders in each of the last 2 drafts. I mean, those are huge drafts.
You could talk about, I'm not diving into the particulars. You had another very successful partial exit recently. And so I want to use that to ask. So financially, you've been very blessed, professionally very blessed, but you still go hard. Like, why are you not sipping drinks on the beach and working on your golf game?
I just enjoy it. I think, you become comfortable at doing something, and you achieve some success at it, and it makes you happy to achieve success, to compete and win, and whether that's signing a client or doing a record deal or making a client happy. I would say that, what drives me is the competition still. It's just, it's so fun to just take on the Chargers, with Justin Herbert. That doesn't mean beat them. It just means taking them on.
Fun? Probably not.
Hell no.
Yeah,
fun would not be the word they would use. But at this point, though, honestly, in all seriousness, Ed McGuire and I have done so many deals together. We did Ryan Leaf's deal together back in the day. So
do you just like do you go grab a beer somewhere? You're like, all right, let's work this out.
We can cut through a lot just from experience. And the other thing that drives me are the people. I think it's both the people that we represent. I always say that I have 3 families. One of the clients, and so Justin Herbert is a client, but he comes to the house. He doesn't have that many people that he can relate to. It's as we discussed, and as these guys have to, because of social media and trust levels, they have to keep people around them small. That's certainly the case with Justin, who's an introvert anyway, and so he called a little bit ago and was sort of bummed out, and he said, "Gosh, I had roommates last year, and they're all married or they have girlfriends, and like it was this sad thing. It's like, I've come to my house and he's throwing tennis balls to my dog in the backyard, and so those relationships. And he's a great guy. I mean, couldn't have any more salt of the earth, fantastic, well-meaning guy. Who's going to be charitable and do all the right things during and after his career. Guiding a guy like that, who's full of questions, guiding a guy like that from age 22 to age 40 or what have you.
And it brings you fulfillment and satisfaction.
It's huge. I mean, watching, like I described when I first met Drew Bledsoe, and now he has 4 kids in college and a winery in Washington, in Walla Walla, Washington, and hugely successful businessman. There's a lot of water under bridges, between then and now, and just getting that, being along for the ride is just really rewarding.
What advice would you have for young professionals? Let's call it 22, coming out of college, and they don't have to be going. Not advice. Don't get into a sports agency.
Right.
Whether they get into a sports agency or any career, any profession, like what lessons and takeaways from a mental approach to professional success that, looking back, you've developed or you've learned over the years that you would unsolicitedly share with anyone listening?
Yeah, I'd say there are 2 or 3 things. The first is know the substance. Like, there's nothing like knowing the substance of whatever it is you're doing. You can hook a guy with flash or a connection or what have you with something cheap, but I found, or in the early 90s, that once I did something substantive for somebody, handled their injury, their injury situation well, or did an appeal in front of the league well, that's when they became a client as opposed to just a sort of a guy in the firm. So there's nothing, a lot of people want to use connections and do the quick thing, to build a business. There's nothing like knowing the substance of what you're doing. The second is be around where things are happening. So if you want to go into, if you want to be involved in Hollywood, be around the studios, just get a job, or otherwise just be around.
If you want to be a sports agent, be an athletic trainer.
Yes, that's right.
That's right.
And then wait 20, 30 years for what have you, to still be working my butt off. But I think just being around it, being at conventions, seeing people that are relevant in the business,
just keep showing up.
Is helpful. You become a familiar face. And the third is the hardest one and one of the more important ones is just be patient. If you want the thing overnight, it's generally not going to work. You know that. You went through. You've been in the darkness before, and everybody in this chair has been in the darkness, and you just have to get the substance, to get the experience. You have to be in the darkness a little bit.
Would you say that's a challenge? I don't like the stereotype. Every generation has strengths and weaknesses.
I think it's harder now.
Is that because everything's so accessible at all times?
Just everything's so like this, and so why can't I have a career like that?
How do you? You have a young professional at Athletes First, or maybe it's just someone you've been asked to speak to, and they're 2 years in. They're like, "Hey, I'm not you yet." How do you counsel someone like that? What's the message?
Well, you kick them out the door.
Be patient, but
yeah, I mean, you
kick them out the door.
Yeah, you use the Kyle Matthews approach. No, I think it's just everybody's different, and that person will have something that they need to work on. Like I needed to work on my pitch in 1992 or 3. I just needed to get my own thing, as I was sort of flailing around with attracting clients like on my own. I developed one and built on it, and it got me into something. So it's for that person. I think that one thing that every generation does, particularly this one, is they do the easy thing. Like, I'll have 2 quarterbacks in a game, and after the game, I always go see the losing quarterback. That's the harder thing, but it's the more important thing. Winning quarterback's going to be fine, right? Losing quarterback or injured quarterback or what have you, the guy who's troubled, that's the thing you have to do. And you can analogize that or use that, to a bunch of situations. Instead of doing the stupid little thing you want to do that day, call the top 10 guy, or his coach, like go try to land the whale, or, sit in a room by yourself and try to figure out the best way to blow away the Justin Herbert negotiation. Just work on the big thing, the hard thing. Don't be afraid of confrontation. Just do the hard thing as opposed to we all want to just get through the day doing easy things.
What would you say to someone?
Like podcasts.
Yeah, right. Yeah, these are not too bad. I just get to talk to people. It's not too bad.
Oh, it's fun.
But you get, takes time to get here. What would you say to someone who thinks they want, whether it's starting a career, starting a business, like you did Athletes First, or taking that leap professionally or personally somewhere in their life, but they're afraid of failure. They're afraid of, like, hey, the judgment, right, coming down on them. Like, what advice would you have based on your experience to, kind of encourage them to just go get it, whatever it is.
Fear is a tough thing. I mean, you have to be the top in anything. You have to be pretty fearless. It's me going on my own was possibly really, really stupid, but it was fearless.
It's one of those, you look back, you're like, I don't think I could ever do it again, but you did. But you did
never.
It. Yeah. Ignorance is bliss, right?
What was I thinking? Yeah, but look at the result. Yeah. So, I think that's the nature part of it. I think that's one of those where you either have it or you don't, and there are a lot of people who just aren't wired to
be the quarterback.
Yeah, for what you and I sort of do, right? And all the people in this chair do, because I think commonality probably with the people in this chair are that they've taken some risks, and they've been in the darkness, they've taken the risks, and they've probably been knocked down a few times, and they get back up.
You're right. And I'll piggyback on that. The commonality is certainly risk taking, and I'll tell you that a big one is sacrifice. Is there are long periods of their life, sometimes decades, right?
Yeah, where
they sacrifice tremendous amounts, oftentimes in their, what we define as our personal life, and time with the spouse, time with the kids, working out, like,
right. Just other stuff,
other things, hobbies, sure, but it's really, in a lot of these interviews we've had, and even the ones come out where I kind of know the story, but we want to share it with a broad audience, is there was just a darkness, we call it, the grind, and they grinded, and they worked so hard, and we always joke about, like, the work-life balance. It's there just wasn't balance. There was work, and so that one day, now, should you choose to, you don't have to work again ever.
Right.
Now you choose to, because if I may, these are my words, because you love what you do, and it provides you fulfillment and satisfaction. That is a wonderful thing. But if tomorrow, for whatever reason, it stopped, you could say, then I'm done.
I'm done. Right.
Because of the sacrifice, oftentimes alongside you, a spouse sacrifice,
no doubt.
Sacrifice, time together, sacrifice time with the kids when they're young, just those challenges. And that's another common thread we've seen, like, show up big time in the leaders that, in the successful people we've been able to interview thus far. And that's similar to your story. I mean, like, you and I have never sat and had this conversation, but
we knew.
I knew. I was like, again, we didn't role play this. Like literally, I think I texted you 2 days ago. Hey, I'm going to be in Orange County. Let's do a podcast, which is great. So thank you for that. But I was like, there's no way you get to that level, especially in your profession, which is known to be you got to grind it out business.
That's what Jerry Maguire said at the end there.
Is that what he said?
At the end, right before he said.
And you know, on planes and you know, I've heard some of the stories from the guys. God only knows some of the things you've had to do for athletes over the years. But but I was like, there's no way you get to that level unless there was a chunk of your life where you were driven in a way that it's just not normal.
It's pretty singular. Yeah.
And so it's number one, identifying what does that look like? It's like, what were the hours? What were the time? What was the lifestyle? Right. But then getting back to why, right? Yeah. Why? And this I'll kind of end it here is like, is the last question I'll have. I'll give you different iterations of it is why? Why did you do that? Why did you need to be successful? Why did you work so hard? And then how has your why changed over time?
Yeah. I think the why at the beginning was just, gosh, you always want to be the best, right? You're arguably the best in your field. Your brother was the best, and if he'd kill me if I said this, amongst the best. He would walk off the field and say, "Hey, how many sacks did DeMarcus have today?"
Yeah, he's gonna kill you.
Yeah,
he's gonna kill you. I'll point out that with you were his representation. I think he signed the highest contract at the time.
Yeah, he did.
Ever.
Yeah.
In the NFL for that position, rush, edge, whatever.
Right.
However they describe
outside linebacker, right.
So let's agree that there was a moment he was the best.
Yes.
No bias.
Yes.
At all.
None from me either.
No, I'm very biased.
Me too.
He was phenomenal.
Yeah. No, what was the question?
What is your why? And you said
the why
early on is to be the best.
That out. I mean, I've always been really competitive, like unusually so, much like Aaron playing basketball. And it's just something that's inside you that drives you and drives you and drives you and drives you. Again, even if you're knocked down,
and that might be the nature part,
right? That's just part of me, and the why was the ultimate, I think, pot of gold at the end, and that's not only in economics; it's in building a company that I built, that I'm proud of. And having these employees that I'm proud of, clients that I'm proud of, and a reputation I'm proud of. Now I can look back and, be the guy, certainly in the back, 9 last few holes of his career, looking back at a solid, existence, and having, done a lot for a lot of guys. And, I think the other thing, you alluded to the men of the year that I've worked with. These guys have an enormous ability to help other people, and they make so much money, and they are adored by so many people. And I was with Steve Young not long ago, and we had gotten him what he thought was an appearance with Standard Oil, Chevron, and he was grumbling because he wanted to spend time with his kids. And we walked into this room, and instead of an appearance, it was the 140 scholarship recipients that he had given scholarships to. And so they're coming up to him with flowers, and they're crying, and he's crying, and I'm crying.
Very emotional.
That's as he said, that's far more important than the last incentive.
It was a culmination of such a individually within that your relationship with Steve, but it's very much a culmination of a seminal moment in all you've poured into the career.
And it's so cool to see what good these guys can do. Clay with the disease that he's helped. I mean, it's just
Duchenne. Duchenne.
I mean, it's we did that Cadillac commercial that sort of combined the helping cure Duchenne, with getting them an endorsement and doing those types of things. I mean, how can you not enjoy that?
That's probably his biggest. I think before we got on, you said, "Hey, how's he without the career and does he miss that?" I say he probably misses the free Cadillacs, the most. Now he's just like me. He's got to walk on a lot and lease a car. I was like, yeah, this is how the other half lives, boy.
And Nike, it's like,
oh my gosh, man, that Nike money back in the day, that was sweet.
Well, it always ended. I think June 30th was the last.
Oh yeah,
day.
and like we
would call the guy and say, "You have 10,000."
Yeah, and then Clay would text me and my brothers and message like, "Hey,
you have 3 days.
Each of you, I have." 10,000 left, so each of you guys get $2,000 to Nike. Here's the signing code, and we're like,
how awesome was that?
Oh, that was amazing. Do they still do that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. All right. Man, I need it.
You need another brother.
I know, I need another brother. I got enough brothers. But David, I can't thank you for coming on the show.
This is fun.
This is
awesome.
Great. You too. I'll tell you, you spoke about reputation, and you're proud of your reputation. You should be. Yeah. You have a phenomenal professional reputation. Athletes First is the best of the best in your space. I can speak from experience. The biggest thing I'll tell you, sometimes people ask, and I just say, with David, he always did what he said he was going to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's good.
It was very meaningful for my family and I. I want to thank you for how you've looked out for all the knuckleheads on my side of the fence. But this has been a great hang.
Yeah, it's fun to see you doing what you're doing too.
Oh, yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, man.
All right, man. Take care.